Hi there, thanks for tuning in to this tutorial. Today we'll be painting this weathered wooden crate bursting with sunflowers. I'm using Sonnet and SeimiArt watercolors. I have my watercolor palette ready. I have 1 jar of water today. I'm using my 350 GSM watercolor paper from Dollar Tree. I have my size 6 round Intuition brush by Artigria, and I have a cloth to the side just in case I need to soak up some water or pigment. I'm also painting outside today in plein air, so I hope you'll enjoy the sounds of the fountain and the bird song. So let's get started. So first I wanted to start with this weathered wood crate, and I thought that Payne's Gray would be a nice shade to do this in, and I think it'll be real complementary with these sunflowers. So we're going to start with that. I hope everyone can hear the little bubbling fountain and the bird song. They're not quite as loud as the crickets right now. Okay, so we're just going to make three planks going across here. I'm a little extra shaky today. I do not know why. I might need a snack. I have been out in the gardens today, and I thought it is just so nice. I should work on my paintings in plein air. I like to do that sometimes. Here in West Texas it's very hot, so early in the day is when I like to be outside. It's beautiful right now. It's still really warm, but it's beautiful. So now that just the basic pieces of the crate are done, I want to start with my sunflowers. And I've been a little obsessed with sunflowers lately. I've just been enjoying painting them, and I do kind of do that. I kind of get in not a rut, but I just want to paint some things over and over. I find I do that quite a bit. So now the key, I think, and I've mentioned this on another tutorial, but for me, the key to painting these sunflowers is not to get too uptight or worried about every petal being perfect. Out where we live, we have some wild sunflowers. They just come up volunteer, and they really are always kind of imperfect. They have lots of different angles to the petals, and they kind of they're just kind of messy, but then in that they're just really fun and wonderful. So I like painting them. And I'm going to paint a lot of, well, for me, instead of just 3, I am going to paint quite a few. And you'll notice that as I do these, I do like to paint these little brush strokes just out beside some of the petals. And I like to do that. Oh, that was an interesting bird. I'll have to pay attention to that and see if I can get my bird app to identify it. So I want these kind of going some different directions, and I'm going to let that dry a little. Now, when you're painting outside, things do tend to dry very quickly. So it's kind of a different game than when you're painting inside. Truly, it you can layer in quite a bit more quickly. But if you're wanting leads, then you'll find that that can be a little more challenging. And so you just, it's just a learning curve like anything, and play with it. That way you can see what you like, and, you could definitely start painting into these sunflowers instead of going for the stems as I did. Okay, and I just want to make sure I have some places where I can make leaves, and I actually think I want this leaf to be quite a bit bigger, and so we're just going to do that because this is kind of a big sunflower here. Okay, and I kind of like to sometimes do this draggy thing with my brush, you'll see, but especially for this where we have these sunflowers, they make kind of those little tenderly viney looking things that do come off of their stems, and so I like to do some of those when I paint the sunflowers. I like to have some things that just look a little wild and rowdy. I think they're so fun. Okay, so there's just kind of some basic stuff right there, and I do want to go in and start painting some extra layers, some more layers in my sunflowers. So here I want to take my raw sienna, and for my sunflowers I used yellow deep, and that green is the olive green that I almost always use. Oops, just brushed into my yellow, which is not a problem. I will just dab that out. Don't know quite what I was thinking there. Got a little carried away with my raw sienna and dipped it right into my yellow deep, but it is not a problem. So go in with this, and we're just going to layer in some, that is a little watery. Okay, I'll layer in these little foreground petals too. And then I kind of like to take a watery wash that's just barely got that pigment and do some petals in the background here. And then I'll take some of this yellow deep again and just again kind of a light wash of it. But lots of overlapping petals for these sunflowers, and some of them thick and some of them thin, angling different directions because that is really how they are. And now I've mentioned this with some other sunflower tutorials, but I feel like it's always important to say that with sunflowers, I think it's very easy, especially if you're doing sunflowers that are just very loose and you're not stressing about how everything is I don't know, laid out. You know, if you're not worried about every petal being perfect and all that, it's very easy to get to a place where you can think, oh my goodness, this is not working. What am I doing? And be tempted to give up. And I always say this, don't give up, especially on these flowers where you're doing so many layers. You just have to keep going and let it start taking shape. And then I promise you, at least get yourself and get your painting to the point where you add the dark centers, those beautiful deep sunflower seed centers, because you may just find, and I often do, and listen, I'm talking because this can be my struggle too, but you'll find that when you add those centers, suddenly a painting that you thought had just really no hope of being anything suddenly is beautiful and finished looking. And so just keep going. I know it can be hard. I know the temptation is so easy to give up, but trust me, it's worth it. So many times you'll find that you really do have a beautiful painting there, and you just got to persevere. You just got to. So trust me on this. I certainly have plenty of paintings that go in the trash. I paint for the joy of it and the experience, and I feel like sometimes the only reason I have anything worthwhile is luck, and I am actually okay with that. I'm okay if I just got lucky. That's, you know, I don't care how I make something beautiful. If I made something beautiful, and that's subjective too, that's based on something I like. It doesn't mean that the world will like it or that anyone else would see value in it. So there you go. Just some layers, and you know, nothing, no stress or anything like that. Not trying to make anything really perfect either. So now on my palette, I already had this olive green that I had mixed at some point with just some brown, I think. That's what it looks like to me. And I think I'll go in with that because I just want some more of the, just little leaves and some stems with some other leafy stems, I guess you'd call them. But I just want some more plants filling out this arrangement here. And I might even add a little more brown to this green, just a little. This is my dark brown. Just add that in there. Just want it a little more brown than the olive that we already have. It's so easy to overdo this dark brown because it's so dark. But we'll just kind of make this a looser wash, a lighter wash with less pigment, a little more water. And I think I'll go out here with some of these leaves. And I am not trying to be botanically accurate with any of that. I want to make sure that's got a stem. I never really worry about my stems completing all that much. I do like the stems to make sense, if that makes sense, but I don't tend to worry about every stem meeting up with a flower, every flower having a stem. I just don't worry about that. I don't think you need to, especially, and just I'm being honest here, on these little paintings, because they don't need as much detail. They just really don't. They're very forgiving. That's, I think, one of the reasons I began doing them. I actually started doing them, I think, after doing some painted rocks. And so I was painting rocks, and I still do that. And I paint these rocks to put in places locally. And I love that. That's really fun. But they're small. They're these little small paintings, and I just noticed how much I loved that. Even without a lot of detail, they were like these little works of art. And that really kind of, I don't know, I think that's what kind of springboarded me into this idea of doing these miniature paintings. And I also very much liked that the amount of paper I was using was more minimal, and I, you know, I didn't feel the pressure of making some big painting and trying to complete it, and you know how daunting that can be. These little paintings are so great because, you know, they're kind of like one and done, and what's better than that? So I think I need one more little leafy area over here, and I think I will just bring this down like this, and then I'll have one come down here. So, and these, you know, these little leaves, don't try to make them all perfect. It really works out fine if you're just kind of, you know, keeping them loose, letting them almost just happen. So there, yeah, I'm liking it. I think maybe a little thing going here. Just kind of adding some texture and depth inside here, so these sunflowers are not just coming up out of nothing and nowhere, but there's some leaves kind of coming out here and there. And they don't have to make sense. I mean, it's nice if it seems like, oh, you know, that maybe that would be something that would happen, but I don't think it really matters all too much. And I do try not to be too balanced and matchy-matchy, so you'll see that I don't necessarily have what's going on over here, because I don't want that. I want to be a little more random. I do think I need something in here, and I will make something there, but I'm not too worried about having it match. And I think what I'd like to do is make a little leaf coming off of here. And I'm just going to tell you now, I am the queen of bad leaf placement. Like, it can be very difficult, and I can regret stuff very easily, but I think that worked. Maybe add a little something going out there. So these are just these leaves you kind of see coming out of the background. Let's see. And you know, they don't need to be perfect. They don't need to be all doing the same thing. Okay, I'm liking that. I feel like that leaf right there, ooh, looks a little alone. So I'm going to take a little of this brown green. And that's a little deeper than I wanted, so I am going to dab that. And just making some little things around there. because in some kind of arrangement like this, you really would have some things that kind of overlap. You're not just going to see things neatly spaced. So, gosh, especially with sunflowers, don't you think that they would be kind of, you know, messy and kind of just doing their own thing? Okay, I like it. Like it a lot, actually. Do I always sound surprised when I say that? 'Cause truthfully, I probably kind of am surprised. And I want this little guy to be just a little less, he's just kind of wobbly looking. So I'm just going to kind of blur him and make him have a little bit different shape. I think I'm going to actually blot that. And then, you know, maybe he just needs to be bigger. There we go. Okay. Like it? So, gosh, I'm sorry, I keep hitting my little stand here and it's a little bouncy. That's got to be aggravating trying to watch that. So here's what I want to do next, because we want to see these sunflowers really just come together, and this is what's going to do it. I'm taking my dark brown and I'm still using my size 6 round brush, but it comes to a nice point, and I'm just using this pointy area and I'm dotting a center in here. And the reason I'm dotting it is because I want to leave some of the white, I want to leave some of that color under there, because sunflower seeds can tend to have some, you know, white. They grow in the center of the flower, and they're not perfect, and they, you know, you can see some bits of white in there. But look at that. I just think that brings that whole thing together. Keep it kind of dotty on the outside too. You don't want it to be a solid circle or anything like that. Just keep it real loose and light as you're doing these centers. I promise it's worth it. And so then also, if you think about which direction your flowers are going, this one is going a bit off to the side, and so I want to keep that in mind as I'm doing this center, that this center is going to be much more ellipse. And you guys, excuse the flies, I'm outside, and sometimes I'm so focused on the painting I forget to be noticing the flies and shooing them off. But yes, I'm outside and there are flies. So but yeah, notice how that's going to be at an angle, and instead of being round, it'll be a bit elongated. So that's something just to keep in mind as you paint, especially florals. Just that perspective kind of matters, and it does help give dimension to your painting. It's a very easy way, and I think floral studies really are so good for that, because it's a very easy way to add more depth and to a small degree maybe realism. Oh, there's an airplane. We live near an airport. We actually live in an airport community, so there are planes quite a bit, and it's very fun. Okay, so I'm loving those. Just makes all the difference, don't you think? So I'm just gonna dot these in. And sometimes if I don't know the direction of the flower, because honestly I'm not always painting them with a direction in mind. I try to, but then sometimes, you know, just adding that center kind of makes it come together, even for me. So just dotting that and really trying to keep it from becoming too solid. And you could use a smaller brush for this, and that would potentially make that the process a little easier as far as retaining some of the whites in there. It also helps if your brush is not dripping, saturated, if the tip of it can remain a little dry. But there's that. I love that. And I do feel like I could go in just here and there with a few more petals on those sunflowers. And I rinsed my brush, but I was not too worried about retaining any of the brown as I do a few more of these, because I feel like the brown would be fine. It would be, you know, kind of a normal shade in there. Even the green, because, you know, some flowers can kind of have that green tinge as well. And this can be a good place to make just some new overlapping petals. Again, not worrying too much about any of the details of it. Just having fun here. Okay. And I like that. I want to add a little more shadow, or a shadow beneath this crate, and I want to add some details to the crate, just a little bit. And I think I'll just stick with my Payne's Gray, and I want to make just a shadow at the bottom of each plank. Any of you who can keep your brush a bit more steady than this, I applaud you. I'm really struggling today, and I kind of don't know why. But see, that already right there, that adds some depth that it didn't have. And then you can, and I don't think those have to be perfect. I think it's very forgiving. So I for one am not going to stress over, you know, trying to get that just perfect. And, you know, I think a weathered crate would not be perfect, and it would have some imperfections in the wood, and so I think it actually does just fine being kind of homely and imperfect. Just making these little nails or nail holes, not sure, and then just lightly, I want to add some grain to that, but honestly, I like it so much just like that. So today, I think, at least for now, rather than doing something that I may not like and may regret, I'm just going to leave that part just like that. So now I'm just brushing this Payne's Gray beneath here, and then I'll come back with just a rinsed brush, and having brushed off the water, I just want to brush some water down here and let that just bleed into it. A nice little loose shadow I did not meet up that end, and it's okay. I do not think this has to be perfect. Okay, I like that. I think that's very cute, and happy summer, going into the hot part of summer for us. I'll be interested to see how much of this bleeds in here. I may just take another little light wash. Hopefully I get some kind of some range of shadow there, but not too worried about it. Oops, bumped my camera holder again. So there you go, and I hope that you either followed this along today and painted it with me, that you'll bookmark it or save it and try it again later. But thanks again for joining, and I'd love to know how this goes for you or how it went for you. You can DM me on my Instagram. I'd love to hear about it, and as always, happy painting.